Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the third and final SMAC CCD Alumni Career Panel of Fall of 2023. I'm very excited to welcome you here to meet another great lineup of Notre Dame alums who are active in the sports media industry this time. First off, I'd like to introduce our SMAC minor, Claire DeMeo, who will be moderating the discussion tonight. She's an econ major and has three minors in sport media and culture, but also computer and digital technologies and Chinese. She's a broadcast analyst and communications assistant for Fighting Irish Media. She was a development and data intern at the Baseball Hall of Fame last summer, so fabulous internship there. She plays women's rugby and does the communications for that team. And she also does communications for our SMAC minor. For that, I'm eternally grateful. Thank you, Claire, for all that work. Thanks for moderating tonight. And I'll let you introduce our panelists.
Of course. Thank you for having me, and welcome everyone to the Working in Sports Media SMAC x CCD career panel. We're so happy for all of you guys to come and hear from our panelists who all have a breadth of different experiences in sports media. So very happy to introduce them. So we'll go ahead. So the first one is Joe Ribando, class of 2001. He's a seasoned sports media executive with an 11-year tenure as the Vice President of Distribution, Affiliate Sales, and Marketing at MLB Network. Before joining Major League Baseball, Joe held key positions at the top company and as the director of player licensing and ESPN as senior manager. His versatile career also includes roles in private equity and investment banking. Joe graduated with a BBA in finance and business economics from Notre Dame and has an MBA at the University of Chicago. And he resides in Park Ridge, New Jersey with his wife, Lynn, and their two children. Brian Perkins, class of 95, is the Vice President of IT Production Systems for MLB Network. He oversees technology serving MLB Network's producers, editors, graphic artists, as well as the integration of statistical systems used to enhance storytelling. In addition to MLB Network, Brian oversees the same systems for NHL Network, whose daily on-air operations have been based and operated out of the MLB Network headquarters since October 2015. A 9-time Emmy Award winner, Brian places particular importance on automating creation of on-screen and on-set content containing baseball and hockey data. Brian has also been a key member of MLB Network since it debuted on January 1st, 2009 in a record-setting 50 million homes, the largest launch in cable history at the time. Prior to joining MLB Network, he spent 8 years with NBC News as director of newsroom computer systems, and at NBC, Brian drove the transition from the siloed newsroom systems to an enterprise-wide connected newsroom community. A true believer in the power of technology and data, Brian started his career scoring Little League games in New Jersey and later on moved to record stats for the basketball coaching staff at the University of Notre Dame. He graduated from Notre Dame in 1995 and holds a Master of Science degree in Technology Management from Stevens Institute of Technology. Next, we have Tess Phillips, who's an associate programming manager at Overtime. She's in charge of quality control and publishing across all of Overtime's YouTube and Snapchat channels. In addition to that, she also produces original content for their football and celebrity drama page, OT, where she's the primary talent. She has a lot of experience in negotiating NIL deals, event production and coverage, and frequently travels to cover featured athletes and games. and a bit about Overtime. Overtime builds disruptive news, sports leagues, and IP aimed globally at the next generation of sports fans and athletes. And they have a network of accounts engaging its community of over 85 million fans and followers. And then Caroline Pineda is class of 23, and she's a sports broadcaster who has covered football, basketball, baseball, and baseball for NBC Sports. Her assignments as a sideline reporter have included the USFL, Atlantic 10 basketball, and the 2023 All-Star Features game. She also works on NBC Sunday Night Football production crew, where she assists reporter Melissa Stark on the sidelines during games. Caroline was the 2022 recipient of the Jim Nantz Award, presented annually to the country's most outstanding collegiate sports broadcaster. She joined NBC Sports following an internship with the Washington Post. And Caroline graduated from Notre Dame, where she studied television and journalism. And as a student, Caroline worked as a sideline intern for Notre Dame football on NBC. She also wrote for the Associated Press, NBC Sports, Notre Dame Magazine, and was a student broadcaster for Fighting Irish Media. So that was a quick overview of our panelists today. So now we're going to move into questions. So very briefly, we can start with Joe. How did you get your start in sports? What was the story of how you landed your respective jobs and in your career fields?
Sure. Thanks for the intro, Claire. You went through a big chunk of my bio, and it's kind of ups and downs as it relates to sports. You know, when I got out of Notre Dame, I was a finance major. I pursued the typical finance major investment banking career, and did that for a few years, before sitting at my desk one day after working 100 hours and thinking to myself, there has to be more to life than this. and that's kind of what prompted me to start really having an introspective look into what I wanted to do. And I always loved sports, which is probably the reason why many of you are here today. And I figured I'd make a career of it. So I actually, I networked through the Notre Dame Alumni Network. I went online and I contacted everyone who had any sort of tie to sports that I could. Not because I expected them to give me a job, but just because I wanted to learn how they got to where they got to and figure out all the different paths that are within sports. Found someone who worked at ESPN who was a Notre Dame grad. I think he was 95, 96. I think he's still there as well. And one thing led to another, and I put a lid on my finance and investment banking career and joined ESPN, doing financial work, actually, which is not what I intended my career to go at that point, but I needed to get in the door for a couple of years before figuring out what the best path for me was. So I went to Topps Trading Cards, which you had mentioned, and that's really kind of what kickstarted my my sports career. I was in front of the leagues and the players and agents and teams, and really got a good understanding of what that was all about before finally jumping here to Major League Baseball through my conversations that I had with them while I was at Topps. So again, a little bit of a zigzag. Everyone's going to have a different story. There's no perfect path for sure, but that was my path, and I'm happy where I am.
Excellent, thank you, Brian.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. And Claire, I'd remind you, with all the work you're doing, you do have to sleep. So that's something that you're going to want to, pay attention to. And that goes for everybody. There's a theme here that I kind of, as I was thinking about talking to everybody, that I wanted to just kind of put out there. And that's, I heard this the other day, and it made sense to me, that success is a lagging indicator, which is another way to say, you can study hard, or you can put in a lot of work and not see immediate results, but eventually those results will come, and something good will come out of them. So it was in my bio as well. The way I got started in sports really was, I mean, I was thinking may have been 7 or 8 years old, keeping score at the Little League games. And this is, I'm quite a bit older than you guys, but I still am as excited about doing this kind of work. As Joe mentioned, this is fun, so still as excited about it as I was at that age. What I used to do was, my older neighbors would go to the Little League field to play. I was a smart kid. I knew how to work the scoreboard. It was, kind of cool. I could hit the button and then, 200 feet away, the scoreboard would change. And I got such a thrill out of that. So that's where I got my actual start. And then throughout life, I played sports. When I was not good enough athlete to make teams in high school, I managed them. When I went to Notre Dame, I was in the manager program. When I was not good enough to manage, to be on that, to make the cut for the scholarship level managers, I was a basketball nut, and I happened to know a lot of players, competitive players, and I worked for the team there and got to take stats. I get paid $10 a game plus free hot dogs, and I got to sit courtside, which was just fantastic. At the time, the coach was John McLeod, who had come from the Knicks. So for me, that's a big media team in my media, New Jersey based. So to work for him was amazing. And then when I got out of school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I floundered around for a bit, different jobs. Ultimately, I never studied anything with computers, but they were very logical to me. And I did study science, and I did study technology in a limited capacity. I got a job working at NBC News, which was fun. I was doing tech support, just your regular help desk stuff. But I was one of those people who asked a lot of questions. I felt like I had a valid opinion because I watch TV. Why won't my opinion count? And they appreciated that. And at a certain point, MSNBC was in the building that we are in now, and they were moving out of the building. And I just said, well, who's going in the building? And I wouldn't stop until I found out who was going in the building. And when I found out it was MLB Network, I felt like that success being a lagging indicator was coming to fruition. And it was kind of like a dream job. I get to basically do what I did when I was 7 years old. I get to make the scoreboard work, except now instead of 26 parents at a Little League game, now I'm doing it for whatever it was, 50 million homes when we launched MLB Network. So yeah, it's sort of like Joe, there were a lot of asking of questions, taking inventory of what I enjoy as a person and what I want to bring to the world, which is sort of, life is hard. You want to bring recreation and relief through whatever means you can. And in my case, it's just bringing people, some sports entertainment.
Awesome. Thank you. Tess?
Yeah. So again, thank you, Claire, for the introduction. So I was class of 21 at Notre Dame, which was obviously 2021 was obviously a rough year with COVID and everything. So I definitely had an interesting experience, but my senior year, I still had no clue what I wanted to do. I was living with 6 other girls, and 5 of the 6 of them were all finance majors who had their jobs lined up from previous internships. And so they all of senior year knew what they were doing the following year. And it was definitely really like anxiety inducing, not having any clue what I wanted to do. I knew I was a huge sports fan. I'm from Philadelphia and obviously Notre Dame. So very passionate fan bases there. So it's always been something that was super important to me. So, and I knew I wanted to do that as a career, but I really had no idea kind of what avenues there were to get into sports. And I'd always obviously seen social media posts and would be like, oh, that'd be cool. But again, you really don't know how many paths there are within the sports industry. So when I think it was April of my senior year, I just started applying to any company that I could think of. I was reaching out to any alumni that I knew that worked in sports, any friends of my parents, anyone I knew that I could make some sort of connection with in the sports industry. And I sent out so many LinkedIn messages and emails and stuff like that, and actually got a response from Overtime. And for a little bit of context, I was English and sociology at Notre Dame. So didn't have a lot of sports background, and any time that I would have done a sports internship was obviously shut down because of COVID. I had been talking to a few companies, but that summer, obviously they were not looking to bring on an unpaid intern. They really didn't have the resources for that. So I had no experience in sports other than taking, I think I took a sports journalism class at Notre Dame, and then obviously sports and American culture. The minor hadn't been set up by the time I was a senior, or else I would have probably done that as well. And Overtime was the one company that I heard back from. So I initially applied for a position on their social team in April of my senior year, and my interviews extended until after graduation. So again, graduating from Notre Dame with no job lined up was definitely super stressful, but my interviews extended into the summer, and I was originally applying to do Instagram, Twitter, or short form social media. And after a few rounds of interviewing and trial projects, they actually told me that I would be a better fit helping my now boss, who is our editor-in-chief, running all of our long form social content. So that would be YouTube, Snapchat, everything like that. So then I did a few more interviews with him and got the job in August that summer. It's kind of a running joke at our company that my boss took too long to hire me, but I've been there for a little over 2 years now. And that's kind of how I became to be at Overtime.
That's great. Caroline?
Yeah, well, first I'll echo everyone and say thank you, Claire, for the intro. So I graduated from Notre Dame in 2022. So I've been at NBC for a little over a year now. And I guess, so the way that I initially kind of got into sports also began like Brian when I was very young. And I just remember always watching Notre Dame football on NBC. I was a big Notre Dame fan. And when I got to campus, I just thought any way that I could possibly shadow or be involved in any way with that production crew would be a dream come true. So I had reached out to some of the journalism professors, and basically they introduced me to someone who had interned for that crew. I got to shadow them. Then that turned into an internship where I was helping the then sideline reporter, Catherine Tappan, on the sidelines during games throughout my time as a student. And then in a little bit of fortunate timing, when I graduated from Notre Dame, the producer of Notre Dame football actually became the producer of Sunday Night Football and was hiring his crew for that. So in, I guess a lot of this industry, I think is sometimes good timing and a lot of hard work and then a little bit of good timing. So basically I now have a role where during the fall, I work on the production crew for Sunday Night Football, which is another dream come true. And then in the spring, I have the opportunity to do what I want to do long-term, which is be on the air and be a reporter on some of our other properties. So that includes the USFL, some college basketball, a little bit of baseball. So Brian and Joe got to work with some of your crews in Seattle over the All-Star weekend last year, which was an amazing experience. But then just the rest of the year kind of using the time as much as I can to both absorb from our crews like Sunday Night Football and then apply that to my own work has been kind of the balance of my work since I graduated. So.
Awesome. Thank you guys for all sharing your story and, you know, how you transitioned from Notre Dame to where you are now. So now we would be interested to know kind of what your day-to-day is in these roles and what skills you've found to be most beneficial in your career thus far. We can start with Joe again.
I thought we'd go in reverse order this time. That's okay. I'll kick this one off too. Yeah, so my day-to-day, you know, affiliate sales and marketing. The affiliate sales side is the negotiating of contracts and agreements with video providers to get you MLB Network into your home or into your device. So if you think old school, Comcast, DirecTV, Dish Network, Charter, Spectrum, Cablevision, all those cable companies that your parents probably still have or your grandparents at this time. And then more modernly, you know, YouTube TV, Hulu Live TV, DirecTV Stream, Sling, and Fubo and those kind of players. So we negotiate those agreements, the economics behind it, the terms and the distribution terms. And then on the marketing side of it, partnering with them after the agreement is in place to get the word out, spread the word about MLB Network, what our programming is looking like down the road, highlighting any sort of tentpole activities that we have going on, Hall of Fame induction ceremony, the BBWAA awards that are going on this week, opening day, spring training, all-star coverage, etc. So, and to Brian's earlier point, you know, MLB Network also acts as an agent on the behalf of the NHL to manage NHL Network as well. So anything that I just explained for MLB Network, we also do on the hockey side. So we have 2 of the 4 league networks that kind of fall under our purview and under the umbrella. So that's my day to day. You know, I mentioned 10 or so video providers domestically, but my group also handles it internationally as well. There's a lot of areas of the world that currently don't carry MLB Network, so we're constantly trying to chase that down. That's awesome, really interesting. It's business development, it's international exposure. It's really fulfilling when we can unlock a new country for MLB Network or a new territory. It's definitely rewarding. Yeah, so I do that every day.
That's great. Brian, what about you?
A lot of times I go just bug Joe because I don't have a whole lot. He just shoos me away because he's on phone calls.
That's true. That's a good point.
At this point in my sort of evolution, I do a lot. This is the boring part. I do a lot of, there's a lot of business that is just management. So I'm managing budgets, and I'm making sure that we're sort of planning for the future in terms of what we're going to spend and what we need to replace and whatever, and then managing people. But in terms of the actual sort of the meat of what my department does, I have a group of 10 among an engineering group of about 45, and what we're, aside from making sure everything works, we are making sure that we're looking in terms of what our programming is going to look like. You know, Joe mentioned all these cable television networks. We have a linear television channel. We always have to make sure that works, and we have to make sure that we have the equipment to do it. So we're making sure we have that equipment. We're making sure we're forecasting out when that's going to age out. We're making sure that the new technology that we buy is fits the new needs, and those new needs to us are new needs. They're always going to include some linear television, but there's all kinds of, as you know, all kinds of media. So we want to make sure that we can make the most efficient purchases, things that we can manage in terms of support. We don't end up buying things that we can't make work, things like that. So that's the day to day. And then and just to sort of give you a little bit more meat on the bone here about what that actually means is we're buying licenses for plugins that may create certain effects on our the opens for MLB Network showcase games. We actually produce 2 games a night on 2 games every Friday night for Apple TV. So if you have Apple TV and you watch Friday Night Baseball, those are coming out of MLB Network. So we're making sure that we listen to Apple, and when they say, okay, we want it to look like Apple, we're saying, okay, designers make it look like that. And if we need to buy any licensing or any sort of hardware or technology that we can't currently do that look, we go and find the right product to buy to create that look and get that installed. And that all comes with a lot of planning because, and this is what I enjoy really, there are like real world limitations. There are things that we can't do because we don't have enough room. We don't have enough power to cool the room if we put in a server that's going to create this much heat. So maybe we need to shut something down, or we don't have enough money in the budget. We won't make any money off of the Apple deal if we overspend on certain technology. So there's a lot of decisions that I get to make that have to do with real world limitations. I think that's a nice challenge for me. It's like doing a new puzzle every day. And that's another thing to mention. It's never the same. It's the same sort of puzzle every day, but it's never the same puzzle, which is really exciting. It's really fun. And at the end, you always want to remember that what we're doing it's just putting sports on TV. So as much pressure as we put on ourselves here to do a good job, it's really nice to know that, this is just recreation at the end of the day. We want to do a great job, but, I mention this in particular because when I worked in news for about 8 years, it was a lot more serious and of an attitude. Here, we want to do a good job. We're pushing each other to do a good job. We're giving each other a hard time when we don't do a good job. But it's not such a hard time where we don't laugh at at the end of the day, and we're not, getting angry at each other, and we're not ruining relationships over it. We realize that what we're doing is a bonus in life. So just wanted to mention that, and that's the day. Oh, and by the way, just so you know, like I'm still here. It's nice to be able to come in at 10 or 11 in the morning. We're on TV at night, so I'm here at 7 or 7:30 at night. That's not a big deal for me. That's really kind of nice. It's nice to be able to commute, not when everybody else is commuting. And what I do and what we do producing television is something that people want to watch. It doesn't always feel like a job. Sometimes it feels like, really lucky that we get to just kind of do puzzles, figure things out, and get a check at the end of the day. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. Tess, what about you?
Yeah, so Overtime is obviously a startup. I mean, it's now in its 6th year. So there's, I think, a little over 300 full-time employees, but it's still kind of generally that startup culture that everyone's just kind of jumping into random odd jobs. So I wouldn't say any 2 days are the same for me, but my primary role at Overtime, my boss and I are in charge of quality control and publishing across all of our YouTube and Snapchat channels. So basically what that means is when an editor is finished with a cut of, say, a YouTube video we're publishing that Saturday, they'll send it to me. I will be meticulously watching it for any notes, whether that be our Overtime watermark is missing from it, or there's something that maybe wouldn't make the featured athlete, like they wouldn't be happy about being in the video. So it can kind of range from a lot of different things. And then sending those notes back to the editor. Once I finally approve the cut, I'm also the one that's back end uploading all the stuff to YouTube, writing the descriptions, coming up with the titles, stuff like that, which seems a little silly. And my English professors at Notre Dame would probably have a cow if they knew I was using my Notre Dame English degree to write YouTube titles. But it is really important at the end of the day because that's how we get views and that's how we make money. So that's kind of my day-to-day. I'm also on Snapchat. I'm the one, it's kind of the same thing. I'm also editing the little tiles you see when you're scrolling on Snapchat. So if you ever see any Overtime shows, I've edited those. I sometimes make our YouTube cover images. We also have a design team that help with that. But yeah, I mean, on a day-to-day, I could also be making an original video for our football channel. So that could be sourcing footage, writing scripts, stuff like that. I also am on air talent for our drama channel, OT. The previous host left, so I kind of just stepped into that. So that's been kind of fun doing celebrity gossip. I could be, our company actually has a partnership with Topps, which is very funny. So I could be writing the backs of sports cards for Topps for Overtime Elite, our league in Atlanta. So I could be negotiating NIL deals with agents. So there's a lot of different things that I could be doing on a day-to-day basis. Again, it's kind of just hopping into random things, which is great because it gives me a lot of experience and a lot of different kind of being able to touch different parts of the company, which is really cool. But that is kind of my day-to-day. And then on the weekends, waking up and actually pressing publish and making sure that our content is fed to all of our audience.
Yeah, that's really cool. Caroline, what about you?
Yeah, so I mentioned kind of my year is broken up into a couple different parts. So typically like those kind of 6 months look a little bit different than the current 6 months. So right now during football season with Sunday Night Football obviously in full swing, we are working on a lot of different things like Monday to Thursday, preparing for essentially Friday to Sunday, which obviously culminates in Sunday night. So Monday to Thursday is a lot of generating ideas for production meetings that we have on Wednesdays. It's a lot of reviewing the previous week and looking ahead to future weeks and always kind of examining how we can get better and continue to improve and evolve. I coordinate a couple different things for our on-site teams. So if you watch Sunday Night Football, like the shots of a city going to and from commercial break, anything like from the ground, so like restaurants, monuments, things like that, that's my team. So Monday to Thursday is a lot of planning, getting permits, kind of getting permission to film certain things, working with restaurant owners, people like that. We also do, maybe you guys are familiar with the Sunday Night Football lineup introductions where people say like their name and their school. My crew shoots those, which leads to a lot of fun moments. If you guys saw it a couple weeks ago, Justin Pugh straight off the couch. That was one of our more memorable and fun ones for the Giants that week. He walked in and said, well, I have to do something fun. Like my story is too crazy to not do something fun. And we said, as long as it's, as long as it's appropriate and, feel free to do whatever you like. And he said, how about straight off the couch? And those are the moments that are really fun when you get to say like, absolutely have fun with that. And then you get to see people kind of have fun with that on Twitter and react to it. And then on game days, I help Melissa Stark on the sidelines. So kind of an extra set of eyes and ears for her, helping her watch any of the storylines that we've talked about throughout the week, and then coordinating logistics with both PR teams. So any interviews that she has, any injuries that we're tracking and getting information from. The PR staffs, I am kind of a point person for her, because obviously she can be on the air at any moment. So that's kind of my fall. And then my spring and summer is a lot of my own broadcast, which is wonderful and so much fun. And that's a lot of kind of similar preparation leading up to game weekends, and then game weekends until production meetings, a lot of prep, a lot of research, writing stories, just a lot of kind of idea generation and figuring out like the best way to tell a story, and then obviously getting to execute that at the highest level you can when the game itself rolls around.
All right, that's awesome. So our next question has to do with, I guess, advice to students while they're still in their college journeys, or maybe navigating internships and potential jobs. Many of our students are involved with various clubs, extracurriculars, Notre Dame athletics, Fighting Irish Media, you name it. So did you do anything during your time at Notre Dame, either inside or outside of the classroom, that helped you prepare for your career in sports? And do you have any advice or tips that you would give to students who are trying to navigate their journeys as well? And maybe we can go in reverse order this time. So Caroline, would you like to start with that?
Yeah, happy to. So first of all, I'll say like both inside and outside the classroom, it's funny, like my Tess mentioned like her running joke with like when she got hired. I feel like my running joke with my coworkers is anytime Notre Dame gets brought up, they're like, okay, we get it. Like it's a great place. But obviously you can't, it's hard to speak, like you can't really do it justice, I guess. And I would say, I was FTT in journalism, and both of those were tremendous, and the professors were amazing. And I apply so many things that I learned kind of across the board and all of those still to my job. And then outside of it, I did Fighting Irish Media, which again, it's so amazing, the resources that FIM has and the opportunities that it gives to students. And Jake and Andrew I worked with when I was at school, and they're getting like these types of opportunities, and not only FIM, but then also student media. So NDTV, WVFI, Scholastic, just so many opportunities, I think, to get involved and get the real world application. And it really does continue to pay off. And in sports media, I feel like any reps are good reps, and to have not only the reps, but then to have the infrastructure that allows you to get such quality reps is amazing. And when people visit our NDTV studios at Notre Dame, they're blown away by like the amount of resources that we have as college students, and that they continue to have. And same with Fighting Irish Media, just the chance to work on those crews and to have the roles that everyone has, I just can't speak highly enough of. So everything I did inside and outside the classroom still pays dividends, and I'm sure will continue to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tess, what about you?
I have a lot of things I'd like to say. First of all, I know Professor Coleman said that there are some maybe first years on this call. So my first bit of advice would be like, do not stress out. Again, as I said, I did not get my job offer from Overtime until after I graduated from Notre Dame in August. So I kind of just spent that summer waitressing, but there is like no real timeline. Like obviously it's different with like, if you have friends in med school, like they're prepping for, med school applications and stuff like that. Finance, they're getting their internships and then probably their return offers in the fall of like our junior year. So it can be tough at Notre Dame if you know a lot of those people, or if that's who your friends are, like you get stressed out seeing people on these kind of finite timelines, and sports really isn't that way. And so I would say that just kind of don't stress yourself out. But I would also say do a lot of research on the different opportunities that exist within sports. Again, I knew Overtime for posting on social media, and I knew that was something that I might be good at. But once I got to Overtime, I didn't realize how many, even just within our 300-person startup, like how many different niches and pockets there were within our company. Like we have a design team, we have our apparel team, we have an edit and producing team who makes our content, we have a finance team who is doing our finances, we have analytics teams, we have a sales team that's doing brand deals for us. So there are so many different pockets within companies like Overtime, and I'm sure every company within the sports industry. So find what interests you and what your passions are, and think that what you'd be good at, especially from your Notre Dame education, again, I had really no experience because in sports, other than just a passion for sports and a few classes at Notre Dame. But I think my English degree and my sociology degree, being super detail oriented, having a good understanding of like why we make decisions as humans, actually set me up well for my current job role, because I get to be super conscious of why we're making decisions. I'm super conscious of, the copy that I'm writing. So I think having those experiences really set me up nicely and probably landed me my job. And I didn't have any experience in the field. So I would say don't stress out if you don't have experience. You don't also have to be on any specific timeline. And then, yeah, just cast your net wide, find what you're passionate about within sports specifically, because there are so many different avenues you can take. So, and again, like, especially if you're interested in like video editing, our head of social always says, I'm so much more likely to respond to an email if someone's saying, hey, I would really love to be, say, on-air talent. Here are the videos that I've made. If you can present something like that, even if it's just, or if it's editing, stuff like that, being able to like show your work is definitely something that goes a long way, especially with higher ups at these companies as well. So that's kind of my little ramble.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think it also speaks to the value of a Notre Dame education and a liberal arts education as well. That's lovely. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I think Tess covered a lot of really great points. We knew that some of these questions were coming, so it's going to sound a little preachy here. But Tess, you already mentioned some really great things. One, not to stress out. Two, not to feel like you don't have experience, that imposter syndrome. I mean, just by virtue of being at Notre Dame, where there's obviously a great education and a great sports program and a great media presence, that is good experience. And then having the diligence and the work ethic to do a good job is just something that you guys already know from even just having the accomplishment to get where you are even as a first year. So let me just preach for a second here. What I would say, I wish there was one single piece of advice. So I'll come to specifics at the very end, but first thing I would say is just to continue to be wide-eyed, never stop learning. If you see something that you think is interesting, it's worth learning about. If it's interesting to you, it's worth learning about, because as I said before, success being a lagging indicator, that's going to be something that's going to come back to you later on. Maybe it's going to be, if you're a first year, maybe it'll come back in a future year at school. Maybe it'll come back in looking for a job, or maybe like me, it'll be, years after you graduate and you end up finding the job that would have been your dream job when you were 7 years old. But if you learn about those things, eventually those things will come back to you. The second thing that I would say is just and you're doing it by being on this panel or attending this, is to seek the benefit of experience from others, but draw your own conclusions, because everybody's different. You have 4 people on this panel. We all have 4 different jobs. And if you listen to what we're talking about in our day-to-day, our day-to-day jobs aren't even the same as from one day to another, or one part of the season to another. Which is part of the beauty of working in sports. There's a lot of variety. What I'd say there, though, is to also pay particular attention to who's happy at what they do, because if you see somebody that doesn't look like, the most successful person, maybe they don't have the biggest title, maybe they're not the most visible, but if they're happy at what they do, then they've found a home. And that's somebody that you should be really considerate of what their experience is and what their opinions are. Because there are people who do have titles and large paychecks who are not as happy as the others, and those people are worth listening to if that's what you're after. But people who are happy are really the in my opinion the key opinions that you want. And the third sort of generic is just to be brave enough to ask stupid questions, or yeah, that's the biggest thing. I feel like that's my career. I sit there and I go, people talk, do you guys know what TLAs are? Three-letter acronyms, TLAs. We love to use them. I don't know if it's every industry, but in engineering and in sports, I mean, everybody's trying to outdo each other by showing off all these 3-letter acronyms, and it's almost a bluff. And I sit there and I go, what does that mean? What does it stand for? I never heard of that. And 90% of the time there's at least one other person, usually it's more than half the room, that also has the same question. So be brave enough to ask dumb questions. I've gotten feedback in mostly in private, but where I've asked dumb questions, where I've been embarrassed to ask these questions in public, in big meetings with big shots, and somebody will come to me and say, you saved us over $1 million. That was something that we didn't need to do. That actually did happen. So be brave enough to ask dumb questions. And that goes for every level. People know that you're interested if you're asking dumb questions. Now, you know, you shouldn't ask the same dumb question of the same person twice. You should listen to the answer, but that advice still stands. And as far as anything that is sort of tangible, Tess mentioned, consume media thoughtfully. Look at what's being put out there. Look at what the copy looks like, what the thumbnails look like. Look at the formats. Look at the colors. Look at the audio. Listen to the audio thoughtfully. Look at the different aspects of what you're watching and see what you like. What's been successful in terms of views. What's been sort of successful in terms of your own appreciation of it, and develop your own sort of style or your own opinions of what you like and what you would do if you were going to be in an industry that's representing that media. Yeah, if you know, and so that's actually pretty fun, right? You're part of the work that you're doing is just watching stuff. I mean, I think that's great. For a lot of people, that's wasted time. You know, your screen time was, you know, 7 hours a day this week. Well, that's work for me. That's awesome. I get paid for it. As far as anything tangible, at least in my area of it, I'm in the engineering side of it. There's a group called the Sports Video Group. I don't know if you guys all know Scott Reinhardt, who's part of, you know, he does the engineering there at Notre Dame, Fighting Irish Media or Fighting Irish Digital Media. See him a few times a year at these Sports Video Group events. SVG, they have a website. I think it's just svg.org. There are articles in there that tell that are really just industry articles, but they'll tell you how a particular production was done. What that organization really is for marketing products to broadcasters and for broadcasters to make contact with each other. That is an unbelievably great resource for learning names of who are executives in different companies, what companies exist, what new trends are coming up in terms of, hey, there's a new company that has that's gathering metrics, and they're starting out by, you know, testing their technology at the ICC Cricket World Cup, but you know, you may be able to, thank you for putting that up, but you may be able to take whatever you learn from those and say, oh, that can be applied to another sport, or that can be applied to another medium. So that SVG group is really an amazing resource. And you know, I probably have some more, but that's the one that I really feel like, you know, you can just pick names off of there and then find, you know, things that you didn't know existed, and things that you may not have known that you'd like might be something that you find that you really have found a home in. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Joe?
Yeah, I think Caroline, Tess, and Brian hit most of what I was going to say as well. I mean, I think the one thing I would say is, and to emphasize, find your passion, whatever that is. And while you can't see the route maybe to get there now, just know if you work hard and you keep your ear to the ground and you keep, you know, your eyes open and you talk to as many people as possible, and you'll figure out a way to get there. I mean, for me, it was baseball. I always loved baseball. I played through high school. Certainly wasn't good enough to play at Notre Dame, but I played intramurals. But at Notre Dame, it didn't occur to me that I should pursue a career being around baseball. And it really took me 3 years of investment banking and really kind of not enjoying my job to say, well, what do I love? And I just wanted to be around the game, and I wanted to be around people that love the game. And I ultimately got there again to the zigzag I mentioned earlier, but you know, at Topps and here at Major League Baseball, I get that, you know, to Brian's point, I get to watch baseball in my office. You know, I get to go into the office and talk to people about the game the night before, and I know that they watched it, you know, versus other industries where I might not get that. You know, I'm in sales, affiliate sales. I get to entertain people at the World Series and sit down with them and talk baseball. You know, that's one of the rewarding things. I mean, we wouldn't be in sports if there weren't those little things about our everyday lives that are fulfilling. So I would just say, just be introspective. Like, what do you love? You know, and you'll get there, and you really will. And for me, an added bonus is, you know, I got into baseball and I'm in baseball media. And I love that aspect of it as well. And I didn't even realize it at the time. So just kind of keep your eyes out, really think hard about what you want, and and don't be afraid to talk to people like Brian and Caroline and Tess and myself. Notre Dame people, I think we all know, like, are very open and always very willing to help. I've never had any Notre Dame person ever hang the phone up or not even be willing to take a phone call or an email conversation with me. So don't be shy. That's what it takes. It's talking to as many people as possible and learning as you go.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you to all of our panelists. I think it really speaks to the breadth of roles in sports media and in the sports industry. And I think that, it shows that there really is a place for everyone, no matter your academic background, strengths, interests, whatever it is. So I hope that everyone here has taken something valuable from this panel. But now I think this is a good time to open it up to any questions from anyone who has anything to ask, really any one of our panelists. You can just jump in, go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can use the raise hand function and I can call on you. So yeah, go ahead.
I have one. Can I start?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you all so much. It strikes me, listening to you and listening to some of the other alumni we've talked with earlier this semester, again, speaking to the diversity of jobs within the sports media world, does it even make sense to describe this panel as jobs in sports media? Or are there other ways to think about it, like humanities type of work in the sports industry, or data type work in the sports industry? Of course, we have students who bridge those boundaries, but I'm just wondering, like, how would you describe the sports industry landscape? Like, how would you divide it up based on your experience?
It sounds like you're trying to ask us to describe the different tribes among at least in MLB Network, the different sort of tribes of us. We all seem to have, our engineering group has very similar characteristics to each other. Our production group does as well to each other. Don't know that I'm going to answer your question with that, but
No, that I think that works. It's great.
Yeah, so there are so, Joe mentioned it, there are so many different roles that I did not have any clue existed. And even still, I've been here 15 years and we work very closely. We're majority owned by Major League Baseball, by the league itself. And there are so many roles that I had, even to this day, I find out that there's a role that I just had no idea existed. If you have a passion and you like a thing, baseball, in my case, I like a lot of sports, but baseball was my first love as a little kid. You can find a spot that you can find the crossroads of those 2, 3, 4. In Claire's case, what did you say? There were 13 majors, or sorry, 13 minors that you had, or 14?
I mean, 3, but
Yeah. But in any case, that you can usually find a nice intersection that can really satisfy a few of your passions. If it might not be easy to find, and it may be something that you have to create, but there's usually a way to do that. And Professor Coleman, you mentioned data. I mean, that's one of those things I didn't know until I took a data and a database course in graduate school, that was just, I lit up. It was just fantastic. And one of the first sort of tasks I ended up getting here was integrating baseball data into our graphics panels. So when the scoreboard comes up, when we're doing highlights of a game, and between, at the end of the highlight, you want to show the score. And on a baseball scoreboard has quite a few data points. You're looking at runs, hits, errors. You're looking at who's at bat, how many balls and strikes there are, who's pitching, whatever. There's a lot of data points. For reasons that are too boring to get into here, we couldn't just consume that straight from any one source. We had to write a parser to put that data into a database, and then another set of code to extract it to bring it to our graphics machines. I tell you, it was one of those, probably about 2 years, and it was really difficult, and I worked insane amount of hours, and I couldn't wait to do more. It was just, I mean, Friday nights, some problem would occur, and I'd call somebody that I worked with, and I remember calling one time, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. So I guess technically that's Saturday morning. And I said, what are you're wide awake. What are you doing up? And he's like, well, it's Friday night. Things go wrong. I said, are you okay? He's like, Brian, we could have real jobs. This is great. You're right. So that was just a really amazing way of putting a couple things together that one, I didn't know I even liked, and B, it was something that I never, on Sunday night when Monday is looming, I'm never dreading it. It's great. I may dread, waking up a little bit earlier than I would on a weekend, but other than that, it's great. And so finding that intersection between passions that you have is possible. And that's what you should be pursuing.
Yeah, that's like excellent advice for anyone too, for sure.
No, and it sounds like baloney, right? I mean, it really does. I mean, I spent years, and Joe mentioned he spent years doing jobs that were not that were jobs that you Sunday night you go, oh man, Monday morning's coming, fun's over. Keep the faith, it'll come. And it goes back to what I started with. Success is a lagging indicator. Learn about what you like, be excellent at what you like. At some point or another, it'll come to you. You do have to be active in it, but at some point or another, that will pay off.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. I do have a question. I guess, like a common misconception for many Notre Dame students is that they have to pursue career paths that correspond with their majors. I guess, like, to what extent do you feel that's necessarily true? I think a lot of the time we kind of get stuck in a certain path. So what kind of experience do you have to like deconstruct that narrative?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, it was true for me. I was one of those Notre Dame students who fell into that trap. Finance student was getting good grades. All my friends were going into investment banking, money, the whole thing, right? So, and do I regret it? No, because I feel like I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today because it helped build a foundation for analytical skills that I now use in my job every day, right? So, yeah, I think it is a misconception because just because you're majoring in finance or you're majoring in government, or I don't know, whatever your major is, I mean, you can, when we're hiring at Major League Baseball, and at least I don't know if I'm speaking for Brian here, but I don't look for someone who's majored in something specific anymore. I look for smart, energetic, can tell a great story about their experiences at Notre Dame or at any school, but I tend to have nepotism with Notre Dame students in my life. And their post Notre Dame career, how did you get to today of where you want to now work for Major League Baseball? I was able to tell that story, right? Like I went to investment banking, I hated it. I looked deep. I love baseball. I went to ESPN. That was my first job into sports. And then I networked my way to tops and to baseball. Boom. Like that's what we look for. We don't necessarily look for a specific major. Now, if I was the CFO and I was hiring for a finance job, well, then that might be a little different, a little nuanced. But generally speaking, I just think it's, especially in sports, tell the story, why you're here, why there's a passion, why you're better than the next person in terms of how you can do the job. And if you build your resume up to that point, you'll certainly land jobs in sports or any other industry that you might want to pursue, or media.
Can I follow up on that really quickly, Joe? A lot of times, as a Notre Dame professor, it's sometimes hard. It's hard to get students to take risks and try new things because they're so worried about being perfect and getting perfect grades.
Yeah.
things I try to do to mitigate that, but I would love it if you wanted to hopefully support me on this, that being able to demonstrate that you have taken risks, even if it results in a less than perfect grade, it gives you a story that you tried something new and here's what you learned about it, and it can help make you more interesting.
Definitely.
Have you found that to be true?
Definitely. If I'm one of 10 people, if there's 10 people and 9 of them look exactly the same and one is a little different for some reason, I think I want that one person is different. I want to know what their story is. Why did they choose that? Why did they take those risks? Business world, at least from where I've come from, there's obviously a level of risk taking that's necessary in order kind of to achieve what we need to achieve, our goals. I'm on a different side of the business than Brian, but we're driving revenue. We're trying to figure out new deals. I don't want someone who's just going to fit into a cookie cutter. I need someone who's going to think differently a little bit sometimes and bring something new to the table, because we can go out and hire an average resume any day of the week, right? So I would emphasize to any student, like, do different things to set yourself apart from others, because you will get noticed that way.
I can hop into, Claire, to your question about majors, because I would consider myself a pretty good example of that. Again, I was an English major at Notre Dame and a sociology minor. And like most 18-year-olds, I had no idea what I wanted to do in college. And both of my parents were actually English majors in college as well. And my dad ended up going to law school and got a law degree and practices law. And my mom ended up going into business. So I knew it was kind of something that I could do a lot with if I was able to communicate well and stuff like that. And then sociology, I took a couple courses at Notre Dame and I was interested in it and I liked it. And I really liked figuring out kind of why as a society we make certain decisions. And again, I think that's ultimately what got me my job in sports, was my attention to detail and just the way I thought about certain things because of my Notre Dame education. And again, at the end of the day, all of you are getting a Notre Dame education, which is a gift in and of itself. So whatever ways you can market yourself, due to your experiences from your classes, whatever it may be, experiences being on campus, like whatever way you can just sell yourself and make yourself stand out on an application is going to be beneficial. And again, I was able to do that just by emphasizing that I'm really detail oriented. I'm good at writing. I can speak well, whatever it may be. And that's what got me my job at Overtime. So again, you guys are all in great positions being where you are, getting a Notre Dame degree, and just use it kind of to sell yourself up and hype yourself up a little.
So follow up briefly on that too. I feel like it just goes back to, like, we talked about, like, everyone has a different story, and the more people you meet, like, in this industry and beyond, like, the more you see that comes true. And like, one mentor of mine was an econ major in college, and then she was a writer at Sports Illustrated for years. And she's one of my favorite Sports Illustrated writers of all time. And another person who I look up to a lot in the industry was finance and philosophy at Notre Dame. And then she went on to be in sports media. So I think, it's one of the coolest things about the industry is hearing everyone's different stories. And I think that's why, like, teams that are assembled sometimes are so neat and so dynamic. And when you look around, like, the production truck of Saturday Night Football, like, everyone did something different or had a different path to get there. And it's so cool, just not only, like, working with them, but then learning more about their stories. And you just can learn so much more when people do have different experiences and when they can apply those in different ways. And I think it makes any team better too. So as other people have said, like, do what you're interested in, don't overthink what you're interested in. And when you follow your passions and continue to do that over a long period of time, I feel like so many people in this industry are a testament to the fact that it'll take you somewhere you're going to be happy to be.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just real quick, we have one question in the chat. This one is more of an MLB question, but are there any MLB internships open to apply to?
Yeah, so we have an internship program at MLB Network. Joe, is it usually what month is it now? I don't even know. November?
I think they usually get posted in like Q1.
Yeah, so they'll be there in January. So for MLB Network, I would say yes, you can send a resume and you can probably just send it to. I'm happy to take it and send it in. It's not a promise of a spot, but it's always a little easier if it gets sent in, not through HR. unless you already know somebody else that's, that's at the league. So that's MLB Network. And then at the league, I don't know what their schedule is, but I'm assuming it's very similar. I don't know, Joe, if you know that.
Yeah, it is similar. It's the same timing. So I would say probably late January, early February, they get posted, they get announced April-ish. And then I think it's an 8 to 10 week program in the summer.
Yep.
And that's at
Great,
the league.
thanks.
That's at the league office, the network, and at MLB.com.
Mhm. And I imagine most of you undergraduates have signed up for the handshake. It's not an app, whatever it is, through the Career Center. Dorothy Kozak at the Career Center had to leave early, but she wanted to send a special thank you to the panelists and all the students for coming. We've hit 8:01. So Claire, thank you so much for moderating. Your star, Caroline, Joe, Brian, and Tess, really appreciate your time.
you.
It's fabulous to see you. Thank you for coming. We'll make this Zoom available online in a little while. And if you have any questions about the SMAC minor, you know where to find me. And if the panelists are okay with me sharing your emails, well, either way, just let me know and I'll behave accordingly.
Really?
So thank you so much. And I will hope to see you all on the flip side.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,